Well, this week, the Biden administration rolled out new restrictions on migrants seeking asylum in the U.S. as Republican lawmakers call for a greater focus on border security. The rules would deny asylum to migrants who show up at the southern border without first seeking protection in another country they pass through. This comes as pandemic-era limits on migrants are set to expire in May. Republicans have been critical of the president's handling of immigration and the crisis at the border since he took office. Here to talk about his recent trip to the border is Representative Derrick Van Orden. First up, thanks so much for joining us.
Well, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right, you went with Speaker McCarthy and others on that trip to the Mexico border. What did you see?
Well, what I saw was very clear, undeniable, unequivocal evidence that the President of the United States and the Secretary of Homeland Defense have been lying to the American public. We stood inside an operations center for about 15 minutes watching a live feed from a UAV from our Predator. And within those 15 minutes, we saw at least 10 people cross the border and infiltrate the United States of America. And to put this into perspective, that Predator, the footprint that it had for the radar was about 1% of the Tucson sector. So if you extrapolate that out across the entire border, the areas that are not covered by the border wall, you're talking about hundreds of illegal immigrants entering the country every minute. So when the Secretary of Homeland Security, Mayorkas, says that the border's secure, he's just lying at this point, and he knows it. And it's shameful. I wish more people from Wisconsin could get down to the border and see it with their own eyes, because this is not a political statement. I literally watched on live television illegal immigrants enter the country in droves.
You went to the border twice recently. Why make this such a priority this early into your term, especially when you represent a state that is so far from the border?
Well, unfortunately, due to Joe Biden's lackadaisical approach to securing the border, every state has become a border state. We've had over 150,000 American citizens die of fentanyl overdoses since Joe Biden has taken office. Over 1,280 Wisconsin citizens have died of fentanyl overdose since Joe Biden has taken office. In January alone, we had 9 folks die in La Crosse, Wisconsin, from fentanyl overdose. In La Crosse, they seized 3 pounds of fentanyl in April. Over in Appleton, just outside the district, they seized 11 pounds of fentanyl. This is enough to kill hundreds of thousands of American citizens, and we know it's coming across the southern border. That's why this is a priority, because our brothers and sisters and mothers and daughters, uncles and aunts are dying from this scourge. There's not a single person that's going to listen to this interview that has not been negatively affected one way or another by fentanyl. So the reason that this is a priority is because this drug is killing American citizens across our country and right here in Wisconsin. I can't think of anything else that we should prioritize higher than that.
You're on 3 committees in Congress, including Veteran Affairs. As a veteran, what changes
Correct.
are you potentially looking at there?
Well, so I am on the Agriculture Committee. I thought that's incredibly important to be on that. We've got the Farm Bill coming up, and I'm very happy to be on that committee. I'm also on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, which, again, you can raise as much stuff as you want in the field, but if you can't get it to a market, it might as well rot out there. You can produce as many widgets as you can in a factory, but if you can't get those to a market, you might as well not do it, because they're just going to sit in a warehouse. And then I'm on the Veterans Affairs Committee. I thought it was very important to get on that committee because this whole stuff with the opioid abuse and overprescription of opioids started right here in the district in Toma at the Veterans Hospital. So you need to be inside of a problem to be able to fix it. And I've been lucky enough to be appointed as one of 5 freshmen to chair a subcommittee under Veterans Affairs. And in my purview, in my portfolio, are veterans education. So that's the GI Bill and vocational rehabilitation. That's how I got to law school. And then the transition period from being an active duty service member to being a veteran. And then homeless veterans are also in my portfolio. And that's the subcommittee that I'm going to chair. We have less than 1% of our fellow American citizens serve in the United States military now, and we must be able to take care of them. We're housing tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of illegal immigrants. We're paying for their food, we're paying for their shelter, and giving them iPhones. And as long as that's the case, it is completely unacceptable to have a single veteran on the streets. So my priorities, I rearranged the legislative priorities for my subcommittee. First and foremost, it's the transition from active duty to being a veteran. Why is that number one? It's because in that period of time is when service members lose their sense of purpose, they lose their sense of vision, they lose their sense of mission, and that's when they take their own lives. And it's incredibly important that we help prevent veteran suicide. So that's why that's number one. The second one is homeless veterans. That's because if you sleep on the streets, you get introduced to a lot of different things you don't in the military. So that leads to drug and alcohol addiction, and that is a downward spiral into suicide and becoming a public ward, which is terrible because these men and women have served our country honorably. And then the third one is education, because education is a way to get out of a lot of these things. I was raised in abject rural poverty by a single mother, and the reason I'm a member of Congress, one of them is because I got educated. And that's the surefire way out of poverty and into a better way of life is through education. So those are my top three priorities as a chairman of the subcommittee.
You also mentioned you're on the Agriculture Committee. Some of your work there is tied to the SNAP program. Some of your Republican colleagues
Yes.
are pushing to make cuts to that program through either increased eligibility requirements or a reduction in benefits. Would you support that?
Well, here's what we're doing. I'm on the subcommittee that does SNAP, and I volunteered to be on the subcommittee that does SNAP. And the reason being, as I said just a minute ago, I was raised in poverty. I mean, abject rural poverty. So, single mother, broken home. We were on food stamps for a while. We got government cheese. I had subsidized lunches. We were so poor we had to fold over newspapers to stick in our shoes when the soles wore out because we couldn't afford new shoes. And there's a lot of people on the Republican side and on the Democrat side that were raised with silver spoons in their mouths. And they don't understand that these programs are a hand up. They're not a handout. And I walked that road, man, and I get it. So I want to make sure that people understand that these programs are vital. I am a sitting member of Congress, and I was raised in abject rural poverty. And we needed a bridging gap to get to the place where my mother could support us on a single income. So yeah, I volunteered to be on that SNAP program. I plan on applying the lessons learned from my life to that program. Do they need cuts right now? Honest to goodness, I don't know yet because we're still in the evaluation process. This is what we're doing with the Agriculture Committee. It's a series of fact-finding meetings. Some people call them listening sessions, but I'm not fond of that term. We did one in Pennsylvania. We did one out in California. And we're doing another one in Texas. I think I'll be there in a week or so. And then we're also, G.T. Thompson, the chairman of the Agriculture Committee in Congress, said that he'd come here to the 3rd District and we'll hold one of these sessions here. So we're going to find out what worked in the Farm Bill, and we're going to find out what needs improvement in the Farm Bill. And then we'll apply a non-emotional problem-solving methodology to this. So if these programs are working like you did in my case when I was raised in poverty, then they need to stay, and they need to be applied as a hand up, not a handout. And I have absolutely no qualms about addressing directly to my Republican colleagues or Democrat colleagues and explain to them what it's like to be hungry and to be very poor, and say, hey, look, these people may have not walked that road that I have. I'll tell them what it's like, and I will fight to make sure that these programs are available as a hand up, not a handout.
Representative Van Orden, we thank you so much for the time here today.
Yeah, you take care, man.